Hello again, Deb and others. This is Sean again. We're still in the basement working at taking apart a 6460 and learning about its internal components. Here is, coming into view, the headlamp. So here's our headlamp. This model is nicely adjustable. You can tip it down, you can tip it up. Honestly, this came out of a couple of dollar trinket flashlight kit with some other flashlights. It belongs to my children, and it's a fantastic piece for working on this. You're not going to get any points for fashion, but we're working on sewing machines. We're not worried about fashion. So I've got this turned on now. I'll try to not point it at the camera. We're going to start in with the last little bits here that we can do, and I'm going to point out some internal parts that you asked about. Okay, so you talked about the cam stack. I'm going to turn the machine around to the back here. This is the internal cam stack, or this is the optional cams. I'm going to rotate this so they come out. I don't know how well you can see. There are mechanisms that move as you turn the stitch selector. When this comes out all the way, now you can pull this off and set it aside. Now, this is the stitch selector mechanism. This is the stationary cam. I'm going to roll it back in to get it out of the way. And then over on this side is the reverse mechanism. When I push in on the button in the middle of the stitch length selector, I can put the sewing machine into reverse. And what that is doing is rotating and rocking a piece back here, and I will show that in another video or at the end of this one. And then down here at the bottom at that last mechanism, as we turn the stitch width selector, we can see that we're moving this arm up and down, which moves this one, which varies where it's going to ride on this rocker shaft here. That changes how much swing we get out of the needle bar. Now, if you're in the zero mode, you can pull out. I'll get it the other way here. You get it into the right mode, you can pull out on this handle, on this knob. I'm going to turn it around and show you that. We have ourselves set at 0 here. You can pull out on this outer ring. Now, this is the buttonholer mechanism that you asked about. With this set to 0, you can see you have the buttonhole symbol. You pull out, and now when you turn, this turns into one of 4 numbered positions back to 0. So it's one of 5 places. Back at 0, you can push this in. You cannot push it in any of the other modes. You also cannot pull it out in any of the other numbers. Only in the buttonhole position. They talk about exercising the buttonholer. What they're talking about doing is that if you use the machine fairly frequently, they suggest that once every time you sit down to use it, or once per project, that you put it in 0, you pull this out, and run yourself through the buttonholer mechanism, or the buttonholer routine. Letting the machine run while it's doing that. You don't have to catch any thread or have a needle in it, but just to have the machine exercise. So, I'm going to, here's where the button, the reverse button gets pushed in. So I'm going to turn this back around again. Okay, so for others that may not know, I'm going to run this out. When we talk about cracks in the cam stack, we're looking mostly in these 3 little windows that are around the cam stack, and you're looking for where they are cracked. And I have an example of a cracked one I'll show us later. The common problems that I have run into personally on the 6 machines that I have stem mostly from oil being allowed to get hard. And when they talk about these machines needing to be exercised and used, and that they go bad from neglect, what they're commenting about, what they're saying is that unless you've dropped it or let it sit in the rain and rust, where these machines have their problems is that the oil that's in them will become very sticky and can actually, you know, almost solidify. It becomes very gooey. And there's a couple of ways to free these mechanisms up. I'm going to hit pause here and I'm going to gather a couple of things. Okay, so here we are. The things that I use to restore the functionality of these machines a lot, honestly, is a Vidal Sassoon 1600 high and low hairdryer that was, I'm not sure where this one came from, but I found it in my bathroom cupboard. This is all the more heat that I have ever needed. It has a high and a low setting. When it's on high, I have enough heat to make it uncomfortable to keep my hand there, and it has gotten the oil warm enough to allow it to start to soften, and then using the proper lubricants. And in the emails I've talked about what lubricant I use. The accepted and the factory recommended lubricant of choice is Triflow with Teflon. The carrier in the Triflow does very good to dissolve the solidified oil and doesn't damage the other components inside the machine. Then also the Teflon that the carrier leaves behind after it evaporates serves as a lubricant for the machines, and that's what these machines have been serviced with. My understanding for the last 30 years, and it's what should be used. I'll be honest and say that I haven't been. So anyway, that's the hairdryer that I've been using. Here is our stitch selector mechanism removed from the machine, and it sits in here like this. This little flag that moves up and down, it's very stiff because I don't have the lever on it. This is what holds your lamp. That's what pulls the light down. Now if we turn this around this direction, this is how it is installed in the machine right here. And if we look at this one real careful, oops, see that gap right there? Maybe my camera will focus. But there's this window right here has a gap in it. Now this one here, somebody may comment and tell me otherwise. This one here, even though this is cracked, I do not believe that it is cracked around the shaft itself, and it has been working. You can see the crack. Why, can you? Apparently my camera doesn't want to focus in video mode. But this one here has not been able, I've not been able to hold the gear and turn the cams separate. So I think this one here is still holding on, but technically I should replace this one. The problem with this mechanism, and I'll point to it outside the body of the sewing machine, and then I will gladly point to it on the machine itself. So it sits inside the machine this way, and as you turn the knob out here, it is going to want to turn these two little gears stacked on top of each other. See that? And what happens is that the shaft that these gears turn on, there's actually 3 gears. You can't see them in my poorly focused video. But it's these 3 gears that are stacked up. It's one piece. They're on one shaft. Those are the ones that get stiff and break the gear that this is turning. Okay, so this is the shaft that sticks out the front of the machine, and this knob fits on it this way. The slot in there and that pin go together, and this is what you're turning, and this knurled section right here has a gear that is pressed onto it. That pressed on gear doesn't have a lot of meat to it, and so this gear is trying to turn against those stack of 3 that were stiff, and what happens is that those knurlings and that thin gear that doesn't have enough meat breaks apart, and it will either split or break teeth off, or in this case, this one here split into 3 pieces. So here we are. Change props. here we are with a good mechanism that that functions properly. This was sent to me by a nice individual online. I'm going to put this on it as, get in there. There we go. Okay. As I'm turning the mechanism, you can barely catch a glimpse deep in here. Now there are 3 gears, 1, 2, 3 sets of teeth that are stacked up. On the back side there are also 3 sets of teeth. This stepped selector mechanism here has some teeth on it. This outer shaft here comes up and has some teeth on it down there. But below this set of teeth and the set of teeth that are on this outer collar, the middle collar, there is a 3rd set of teeth that interface that 3rd large set of teeth there. And I will take some stills and email them to you of this, because the video is just not doing it justice. But when you're turning this, what's happening, you can see that this is going in as that selector mechanism rotates. And if you watch, this has been rocking back and forth while I turn it as well. All that this mechanism in here does is it pulls this out of the way and forces a few other things out of the way in this mechanism so that the cam can go back and forth up and down this shaft. And so you have to have a way to change the speed of the relationship between the different parts. And so that's what's happening with this. And there's also a cam, this arm here that is moving back and forth on us. See that black one moving back and forth? That is riding on that cam that's on that center gear. So, if your stitch selector mechanism isn't turning, don't force this, because it's just that little knurled piece with that little thin gear in there. So, how do you get this to work again is the question. Well, now we'll find out. You don't have to remove that from the machine in most cases, but it is one of the simpler pieces to remove. Back with our other example. Hold on. Okay, back with our other example here that has the permanent cam stack on it. To remove this from the machine, if you had to do it, that's what this middle screw is for. So you don't have to remove that screw to do anything. If you do remove that, this is now going to be loose in the face of the machine. So if you do take this out, there are a couple of pieces here. There is, and again I apologize for the blurries, there's a little thrust washer here, and there's this washer. It's actually more of a bearing, and then there's the screw head itself that holds it all in place. So that all just goes together like that. Alright, now